So at this point, we have a good sense of how user forms work, and we've created a universal form that will allow us to manage printing. Let's shift gears and see how we create a user form that will allow us to handle data entry tasks. So it's going to be a bit different there and more complex, because anytime the user is making choices, then there's just more complexity there. We're not necessarily making choices when they're making inputs. So we will create a brand new user form. We're going to do that in a blank workbook. So we'll create a new workbook. We'll right click on that workbook and choose Insert and add a user form. We're going to set up a frame with some labels and some text boxes and also 3 buttons. So I'll demonstrate that in Excel, and then we'll see what programming code we're going to put behind the form to add some functionality to it. One thing I do in Excel, the modern versions of Excel, there's only one X there. If you keep clicking that X, you can end up closing Excel. I use Control F4 to be able to close the open workbooks so that I can get down to bare metal, if you will. I don't have any workbooks open in Excel. I go to the File menu, I can choose New, double-click Blank Workbook, and so now I've got a blank workbook. So it's Book 4. Book 4 is the one that's going to have my user form. But good idea for me to go ahead and save this user form. I can't not tell you how easy it is to get immersed in writing programming code. And suddenly you have multiple workbooks open, and so you say, well, I'm just going to close this one, and you forget suddenly you've closed the workbook that had your programming code in it. So here I'm going to go and save it on my desktop, and we'll say input form. We'll call it input user form. We'll click save. So here now we need to get to the Visual Basic editor. In fact, what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and set up our form here. So we're going to have first name, last name, and favorite fruit. So basically what we're going to do is create a means by which the user can put in their first name, their last name, and list their favorite fruit. We'll then populate that list. So this will give us a sense of what it looks like to create user forms that collect data entry from the user. And so the user will be able to work one row at a time, and we can also restrict what they're doing so that they don't have free reign of the worksheet there. So let's get to the Visual Basic Editor. Alt F11 will do that for us. At this point, I don't need my plug and print. So if I collapse the personal workbook, notice it hides all that stuff. So notice VBA project input user form. So here I will right click, I will choose Insert, I will choose user form. We'll add a frame to our form first. So we click here, creates a frame. Probably leave it that width, and so we'll just extend it out, make space for our buttons here. Need a couple labels, so I'm going to click and create a label. This first label will be called first name. Click here, create another button, we'll call last name. And a third one there, favorite fruit. So now then we're going to add our text boxes. So text boxes allow us to fill in the blank. So we'll put a fruit here, we'll put a text box there, put a text box here, and we will put text box. Now in this case I didn't create a text box, I created a combo box. If you create the wrong object type, you can right click on it and you can choose delete, or you can also just press the delete key. Now another thing I can do if I want to replicate this current control, I can hold down the control key and drag down and make a copy of it that way. Notice my labels aren't aligned with my field, so I'm going to align these here. I'm going to select this, I'm going to right click, align the tops, select, right click, align the tops, and then here we're going to pull this down, right click, align tops. So that will be the size of our form, so we'll shrink up our frame here. Maybe we'll grab all these items and pull them down a little bit, like so, just so it's not so crowded at the top there. And so for our user form, we'll change the caption of it to data entry. We'll give the user some instructions. Let's say complete all 3 fields and click OK. So very often with my frames, I will put instructions for the user in the frame. Gives it a nice look here. We come along, we add our command button. Now in this case I added it, but I also double clicked on it at the same time and too much happened. So I can go back to my user form. I can right click on the second user form and remove that. I'm going to say no, I don't want that. I can now come back up here, click view object. So here's my form. Notice there's not quite enough room for my button, so I can slide the button over, or I could have also made the form wider. And I can come back and I can click on my command button and click there. First one will be my OK button, CMD OK. Second one will be my cancel button, CMD cancel. Now, easy to blur, and what I just did is I kind of blurred things here. I changed my name there, but I didn't change my caption, so this will be okay. Down here, I get going too fast. I put in the caption, which should be cancel, and I forgot to change the name. So take your time as you're going through this, because you can tangle yourself up if you go too fast. So these fields here, we could put code behind them. We're not going to. Instead, we're going to put some code behind the OK button to make sure that the user filled in all 3, and then we'll put their entries on the worksheet itself. So notice I have 2 different events for that same button. Once I rename the button to CMD OK, this event is no longer valid. So we're going to delete that because I no longer have a button that's called command button 1. Make a space here.